The Buccaneers lose to the Denver Broncos badly. It was 26-7 the final score. This was not a good game to be a Buccaneers fan, certainly. I feel bad for all the Bucs fans that were there. Must have been a frustrating game to be at but it was a frustrating game to watch in general. A lot to get into. I mean, we definitely have to give the Broncos some credit. Have to talk about, all of it, and we will get into every detail of it. I think definitely one of the more frustrating games recently were you were expecting this, going into this game, the Buccaneers were heavy favorites. I think they were a touchdown favorites in this one. It was the last game picked when Kyle and I did the Pick'em show. Like, we're expecting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to come in and not just win, but win in a dominant fashion. Bo Nix had not looked particularly great to start the season. The offense for the Broncos as a whole didn't look very good to start the season. And while the Broncos defense, you figured would give Tampa Bay some trouble, the Buccaneers offense had shown enough life in the first 2 weeks. You didn't really think it would be a massive issue. However, the opposite happened. I mean, quite frankly, I'm sure people will say, well, how did the Buccaneers lose to the Broncos? I don't think they outplayed the Broncos in a single way. I think Denver looked good in literally every facet of the game. I mean, Bo Nix outplayed Baker Mayfield, I thought, in this one. The Broncos' offensive and defensive line certainly won their respective battles, while I think Tampa Bay was able to get some going in the secondary and some going in the receiving game. Not a lot. Denver won in both of those areas as well. So, yeah, I mean, the Broncos came out and played a very good game of football. I think to go in expecting a blowout was too high of expectations to begin with. Even if you don't think Denver's very good, the NFL, it's hard to win games, and just trying to find a way to win this game would have still been, I think, something that should have been our expectations was hopefully we can win, not hopefully we can blow them out. I do think, though, that one of the biggest stories of this game has to be Bo Nix, who, like I said, heading into this game, I didn't think was great. And if you look at his overall numbers, they don't seem that spectacular. Ends up with 216 yards on 36 attempts, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So that's not otherworldly, but he made some really good throws, and he did a good job I made a film study where I talked about this, of limiting the bad plays. We knew Todd Bowles, he's going to do a lot of different stuff. He's going to mix and match and come up with these creative concepts. And when he did do that kind of creative concepts, Nix was ready for it, and he was ready to throw the ball away when plays weren't working. Nothing fazed him too much. And to be honest, the Broncos' offensive line was just really ready for these blitzes. Sean Payton knows Todd Bowles well, and he was ready to stop these pressures. So when there was blitzes, it didn't really affect Nix that much, because a lot of times they didn't even get there, and now you just have less guys in coverage. That makes Nix's job easier. You got to give a huge shout out to the Broncos' offensive line, which played fantastic in this. But of course, listen, this is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan reaction. I'm going to take it through that perspective a little bit. We can't win many games without Vita Vea or Kalijah Kancey. I mean, this Buccaneers pass rush is borderline non-existent. I thought it was a real issue against Detroit. They still got some pressures, but it was usually by forcing the Lions halfbacks to block and then being able to, get pressure through the halfbacks. When it came to trying to beat guys one-on-one, they didn't do a lot then, didn't do a lot in this game. And when Bo Nix has that kind of time, he showed in this game he's not going to make mistakes. And I think the few times he did make mistakes were the few times that the Buccaneers were able to get pressure. So definitely kind of shows the recipe for success if you're a Denver fan, which is for every young quarterback, keep them upright. So again, got to give Denver the credit, but also this could be an issue for Tampa Bay. The coverage for Tampa Bay, I would still say underwhelming. I think it showed some life, especially in the second half. And like I said, some of these plays were going on for so long, eventually someone's going to get open. And also Sean Payton knows how to scheme stuff up really well, especially when there's a lot of players who aren't maybe fully used to playing with each other. There's some issues there, just being young and the injuries and all that. Undoubtedly, it is fair to bring up the injuries for Tampa Bay of guys like Antoine Winfield, Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey. Like, those are big misses. They are. There's not so many injuries, though, that this should have happened. I think that's also fair. Like, you got to give a ton of credit to Denver, but there's enough players here that you should be able to get off the field on occasion, to not essentially have every drive for Denver either be, it felt like every drive was a long drive or or a scoring drive. Like this was a really well done performance offensively for the Denver Broncos, which was the biggest disappointment because again, I expected Bo Nix to crumble in this game. He proved me very wrong, had a very good game. So tip of the cap. Hey, sometimes a player that you don't think is going to play that well plays really well. Then what are you going to do? So Bo Nix, hey, maybe just because he had 2 bad games to start the season. Some Broncos fans thought he played all right. I thought he struggled in those 2 games. But either way, just because you struggle in a couple games doesn't mean you're going to struggle the rest of the season. Played very well, so got to give him credit and all that. The other side of the ball now. The Buccaneers offense did not get much going at all. I mean, it's starting to become, I feel like, a bit of a storyline. Mike Evans hasn't had a dominant start to the season. Stats wise, he did have 2 touchdowns in the opener, but that was a thing. Again, Denver did a good job at double teaming him. They ran a lot of 2 safety deep coverages, which really has frustrated the Buccaneers over the years because they don't have a great short passing game or rushing game. Bucky Irving was able to make some plays in this one. Rashad White just 2.8 yards per carry himself. And of course, when the game gets away from you, you kind of can't run the ball as much as maybe you would like. But yeah, I mean, this was, again, Denver, it's something we probably should have paid more attention to heading into the game. Denver's secondary is really strong, and it's definitely something where they can frustrate you, and it certainly frustrated Tampa Bay in this one. And these are the types of defenses that have frustrated Tampa Bay over the years, even in the Tom Brady years. The 2 safety deep coverages. I'm sure Mel Kiper hated this game, right? Because putting 2 safeties deep and still being able to do an okay job at stopping the run, that's just going to frustrate you. I didn't think Mayfield played very well in this game. It wasn't all his fault for sure. Like I said, there were times when just no one was getting open. What are you supposed to do? Definitely fair to say. I also thought that Mayfield, he had too many plays where I was giving Nix credit for not maximizing damage, right? Throwing the ball away at the right times. There were too many plays where Mayfield just didn't do that. Obviously, the interception wasn't good, but also just too many sacks. There's types of these it kills drives when you take these unnecessary sacks. He took too many unnecessary sacks, in my opinion, which it wasn't a ton, but there was a few unnecessary sacks that really kind of killed their momentum in the third quarter when they still did have a chance. I mean, this was a 2-score game up until the fourth quarter. So, and really, I mean, it was midway through the fourth quarter when it became technically a 3-possession game. So while it always kind of felt like Denver was going to win, Denver was clearly the better team throughout the entirety of the game. It still was one of those situations where the Buccaneers were, you had a chance, is what I'm trying to say. You had a chance, technically, so you can't say, the game got away, that's why the whole game was bad. No, you still were trying to win and just couldn't get it done. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. A frustrating situation. Chris Godwin played well again. He wasn't dominant in this one, but, you'll take that performance. Like I said, Bucky Irving played very well, I thought. Zion McCollum was able to make some plays. He still did get burned a couple times, but I thought he played pretty well in this one. And then Levante David was awesome because he's Levante David. Levante David this probably reminds him of the old days of him being one of the few guys actually showing up. But yeah, as a whole, I mean, where do we go from here is a good way to end this video. That's my thoughts on the game. The right team won. You can't even argue that. Denver maybe is actually decent, and maybe we were too hard on them after taking a couple weeks to figure out how to use a young quarterback, which kind of makes some sense. Or maybe just Tampa Bay played really poorly. I don't know. But either way, where do we go from here? It's a tough loss. There's no getting around it. This is a tough loss. Because yes, the Saints also lost. That's good. But you have to keep in mind the Buccaneers have a first-place schedule. It's going to be harder for them to rack up some of these wins than the other teams. And when you have a game that you're expected to win by a touchdown, again, that's what the Vegas lines were, and you drop that game, you're okay. You're 2-1. You're fine. But the schedule is it gets a lot tougher from here on out. It just does. This was a game they needed to win because now you play the Eagles, who just beat the Saints. You play the Falcons a couple times in the next month, which we'll see how that goes. You play the Saints, who have notoriously given you trouble. There's the Ravens, the Chiefs, the 49ers. That's all in the next 7 games. So not winning this one puts you in a tough spot. If you won this one, you'd be 3-0. You'd just be feeling a lot better. Hard to win 3 straight games, but especially after beating the Lions, a team many think could win the Super Bowl this year, to then drop a team that many people thought before this game could be the first overall pick, it is disappointing. But again, part of it too might be Denver might not be as bad as we thought they would be. But again, I always try to make sure on these videos I give credit to the team that won, because again, they were way better than Tampa Bay in this one. There's no denying it. And I'm not going to use the excuse of, maybe Tampa Bay just thought that they were going to win and walked in not expecting it. Like, maybe, but we don't know that. Maybe Denver just played better. Like, that's also possible. So, yeah. Where do I go from here? I'm nervous. I am much more nervous about this season than I was this morning, because I think the defense has issues, and I thought that going into the year, and then weeks 1 and weeks 2 happened, and it didn't really look like they had issues, and I'm a little bit against Washington, but for the most part, they looked really good in the first 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, maybe I was being too critical of some of the depth issues I had, because yeah, sure, there's injuries, there's gonna be injuries, that's football, like you're not gonna be 100%, you're always gonna have injuries. I think that the defense is concerning for me. And again, as good of a coach as Todd Bowles is, there is only so much you can do there. And then they've got to figure out the running game a little bit. Some of that's just Denver being good defensively, but still. Those are kind of my thoughts on the Buccaneers this week. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.